So, I was messaging one of my friends the other day. Yes, I actually have friends. And he made a good point. He mentioned how he doesn't think Max Verstappen is going to be at Red Bull for too much longer. And it got me thinking, you know what? It's a really good point. How much longer will Max Verstappen be at Red Bull? Because it might not be as straightforward of an answer as you actually might think. So up until the start of 2024, you would easily say Red Bull were one of the best teams in F1. They dominated every single race in 2023 apart from Singapore. For the second half of 2022, no one could touch them. Max Verstappen won near enough every single race. And all of a sudden, we had these allegations with Christian Horner. Now I'm not going to go too much into the allegations about Christian Horner, however, straight after it, Red Bull began to collapse. They didn't win a Constructors' Championship in 2024 like everyone thought they would. Jonathan Wheatley left the team, Adrian Newey left the team. Both Wheatley and Adrian Newey had been at Red Bull since 2006. So that means they were working with the team for 18 years, and all of a sudden, they both leave at pretty much identical times. That cannot be just a coincidence. Surely not. There's got to be something more to that. Now, you could say they were leaving because Red Bull aren't on top anymore. However, around the time they announced they were leaving, Red Bull was still the best team in F1. Also, it's not the first time Red Bull have fallen off the top in F1. I remember in 2014, they went from the best team on the grid in 2013 to probably the third best team on the grid behind Williams and Mercedes. However, Jonathan Wheatley and Adrian Newey still stuck around. Now you could say Newey and Jonathan Wheatley left because they want to do other things, they want to explore new projects. However, they still left at the exact same time. Why would they have wanted to leave Red Bull at the time when it was the best team in F1, where everyone thought they were so dominant they were going to dominate 2024 all over again like they did in 2023? But then they wanted to leave all of a sudden. It came out of nowhere. No one was expecting Adrian Newey to leave Red Bull, and no one was expecting Jonathan Wheatley to leave either. Okay, Aston Martin's a team with loads of potential, so I can see why Adrian Newey's gone to Aston Martin. The same again for Jonathan Wheatley. He's gone to Audi because he wants to be part of a project, and Audi are going to be one of the best teams in F1. But how much longer is Max Verstappen going to want to stick around in Red Bull? Because clearly it's a sinking ship. Now, if you would have told me Jonathan Wheatley and Adrian Newey would be leaving Red Bull at the end of 2024, at the start of 2024, no one would believe you. You would think they're a madman for telling you that. And if you would have said Red Bull aren't going to win the Constructors in 2024, again, no one would believe you because they were so dominant at the time. And now all of a sudden, you could arguably say Red Bull are the fourth best team on the grid. And the only reason they are third in the Constructors' Championship is because Max Verstappen is getting the absolute best of what is quite a bad car. Okay, I know Ferrari haven't had the best start to the season, but there's clearly potential in that car because Lewis Hamilton was able to win the sprint race and he got pole in sprint qualifying, so that Ferrari has clearly got potential. Mercedes have had a podium in both the opening two races so far. Okay, that podium might not have been down to raw pace, but we know how good Mercedes are at upgrading their car through the season, so they will only get better. Verstappen's contract runs out at the end of 2028, and for me now, is Verstappen going to want to think, well, should I stay at Red Bull and ride this storm out and the team will get better, or should I look elsewhere and complete my F1 career with the most championship victories, the most race victories? Because I know Verstappen said he's not that bothered about breaking records, but surely you would be. Surely any F1 driver would want to break all the records. So if Verstappen was to leave Red Bull, where would he go? Well, to be honest, Verstappen is that good of a driver. He could walk into any team quite happily. But there's 4 teams that could be a potential place for Max Verstappen to go. We know Toto Wolff has shown a lot of interest in Max Verstappen, and we saw it in Drive to Survive. Toto Wolff was showing a lot of interest in signing Max Verstappen for Mercedes in 2025 to replace Lewis Hamilton. But then the question would be, who would he replace at Mercedes? Because Kimi Antonelli's going nowhere unless he has an absolutely terrible season, but from what he's shown so far, I don't think he will. And they can't just throw George Russell out of the team because Toto Wolff wants Max Verstappen, and we know George Russell and Max Verstappen would not get on well as teammates. So there's almost like a little bit of a roadblock there for Max Verstappen to go to Mercedes. I feel like Toto would have to get rid of George Russell, but then where would George Russell go? George Russell doesn't deserve to be thrown out of F1 because he is a really good driver. So I feel like until George Russell leaves Mercedes, then Max Verstappen can't go to Mercedes. So where else could he go? Well, apparently there's been links between Verstappen and Ferrari, but he'll have to wait for Lewis Hamilton to retire because Ferrari aren't just going to bin Lewis Hamilton off. And I can't see Lewis Hamilton retiring until 2027 because he'll be hungry to get that 8th championship. But then again, that ties into Max Verstappen's Red Bull contract quite perfectly. Say now Lewis Hamilton retires at the end of 2027, then come 2028, Verstappen will only have 1 year left on his contract. So he could break that contract 1 year early, Red Bull will still get money for him, and Verstappen will go to Ferrari to maybe replace Lewis Hamilton. Aston Martin's another really good option for Max Verstappen. We know Aston Martin are interested in Verstappen because apparently Lawrence Stroll offered him a £1 billion contract. How true that is, I don't know. But it would still make sense for Verstappen to go to Aston Martin because he'd be able to work with Adrian Newey again. And we know how good of a pairing that is between Adrian Newey and Max Verstappen because they've won multiple world championships together. Who would Verstappen replace at Aston Martin? Probably Fernando Alonso. He's not had the best start to 2025 so far. And maybe, just maybe, he's starting to show his age just a little bit. Obviously, Lance Stroll's not going anywhere for as long as Lawrence Stroll is in the team, so it would have to be Verstappen and Stroll at Aston Martin. But I don't think Aston Martin will just get rid of Fernando Alonso really quickly, like come the end of this season and say Alonso leaves Aston Martin when he wants to leave Aston Martin. Because Alonso's just that good of a driver, no one's going to get rid of him. And I feel the final option for Max Verstappen would be to go to Audi. So if Verstappen was to go to Audi, he'd be able to work with Jonathan Wheatley again. And it's the same scenario as if he was to join Aston Martin. He's got a great partnership with Jonathan Wheatley, as obviously they've won multiple world championships together. And Verstappen said he's not bothered about breaking records, right? So why doesn't he go and prove that and go and join the Audi project, write off a few seasons of his career and help Audi get back to the top? Well, I say get back to the top because they've never been in F1 before, and help Audi get to the top of F1. If he's not that bothered about breaking records, then why doesn't he go and do that? I think it's a really good possibility Verstappen doesn't stay at Red Bull for that much longer. Like I said, if Red Bull are losing senior figures like Jonathan Wheatley, Adrian Newey, in the same year after they've worked there for so long, and the teams are sinking ship right now. They've gone from being one of the most dominant teams in F1 history to the third best team on the grid, or maybe even the fourth best team on the grid in the space of a season. I think it's clear Red Bull aren't going to win a Constructors' Championship this season, and they're probably not going to win a Drivers' Championship either, unless Max Verstappen pulls off an absolute miracle, which wouldn't be that surprising because he could probably do that. We know Max is capable of getting the best out of a bad car. We saw in Brazil last season, the Red Bull was nowhere near the best car on the grid, but he still won the race. However, a few performances over a season where he's going to be able to get the best out of a bad car is not going to mean he's going to win a driver's title, and Max Verstappen will want to win a driver's title. What I'm saying now is, if Verstappen wasn't a Red Bull driver, if he wasn't driving for Red Bull, then I feel like Red Bull would be probably like the 6th or 7th best car on the grid. And for Red Bull, that's not good enough. And part of me feels it's only going to get worse because they've lost Adrian Newey now. One of the main reasons why Red Bull have been so successful in F1, and now he's just gone. And the same for Jonathan Wheatley as well. It's going to take Red Bull a while to find two really good replacements for Jonathan Wheatley and Adrian Newey. And during that time, they're going to not win any drivers' titles or constructors' titles. So at the moment, Red Bull is a sinking ship and it looks like everyone just wants to leave. Anyway, let me know in the comments how much longer you think Max Verstappen is going to be at Red Bull, or do you think he will stay there? Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more F1 content, and I'll see you all in the next one.